What is up, everybody? I'm Kevin Coleman here with Football Guys. And I don't know about you guys, but we've been diving into this rookie class, doing rookie mocks, doing dynasty mocks, and I've been kind of going over even dynasty buys and sells. But I think it's important to have a kind of a concept if you're going to be trading dynasty picks of next year's class, right? So we always talk about next year's class. And even if you don't follow college football, it's good to know like where people could be looking at that they're excited about those picks, what those values are. So we're going to do a 2024 first round rookie mock on this video. And then at the end, like always, I always want to try to give you guys something actionable. At the end, we're going to be looking at what those are valued at right now, like guys that you can trade and move for a 2024 first, an early first or mid first, a late first. And it gives you got a concept of like who you should be looking at in terms of your dynasty league. So let's dive into this mock. I don't know about you, I'm tired of 2023 mocks. So let's look at a 2024 mock, but then also go into kind of the ideas of like what you can get for these picks, because that's why we're here to kind of talk about dynasty. So let's go into 101 and then where that's at. So I'm just going to kind of go through it with you guys. Who would be at your 101, 102, and all the way through. So right now, the consensus 101 in Superflex is Caleb Williams, 6'1", 215, quarterback out of USC. You see the numbers there, Heisman candidate. Everybody's talking about tank for Caleb. And I think it's good to know, like, hey, people think they can get this kid. And I think if you are kind of tanking or if you're looking at a rebuilding year this year, Caleb should be your target, right? I mean, some people have touted him as being the best prospect since Andrew Luck when we're looking at that. So when you're looking at it overall, like he could be in that tier, right? And you see it there, 4,000 yards, 21 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. So for many people, Caleb is their 101. And again, so using these things in different ways, right? We know people are going to tank. Maybe they need quarterbacks and they're going into it. They're unsure about this class, or you're maybe picking late, but you know you want to kind of maneuver, get some first. And that's that. And it's just about like, so I mentioned like, you don't want to like assign players to picks because that's just not what you do, but you do need to assign value. And right now, the 101 in 2024 class is valued pretty highly because of Caleb. So if you know a team out there has that early first, and they might not know that they're not going to contend next year, maybe they're overconfident about the roster, go ship them at these picks that I show you what you could do for these guys and get ahead of the game. Like that's the whole part of dynasty, right? Now at the 102, it's probably Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, you know, it's talking about a Lamborghini's already out there. Scouts are talking about this kid. He is a phenomenal player. If you haven't gone and watched him play, I highly recommend it. 13 games last year, 77 receptions, 1,200 yards, 14 touchdowns. He was absolutely phenomenal. Great footwork, gets off the line quick. He can do everything that a receiver needs to be able to do. Like if he's not a top 10 pick next year, something drastically changed. Those two guys right now are probably the highest valued, and people are excited. Dynasty managers are excited about this. And even if you don't follow college football, you kind of know these two kids, right? So this is where you kind of say, hey, you want these guys? You got to come get them. And this is where you can use your 2024 picks and say, hey, I can get extract some value there. Now, after 102, 103 is Drake Maye. And I think just in Superflex leagues and talking about it, like, you know, 342, 517, 66% completion percentage, 4,000 yards, legitimate, right? 38 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. And he had that rushing, kind of some rushing upside, but it's similar to like Hal was in that system. But Drake has kind of put himself there at that 103 mark. So you're looking at two very good quarterbacks. And people have talked about these two guys being the top two quarterbacks in the 23 class. So that's how they're getting valued, whether you see it based on your model or based on whatever you do. But that's how they're being valued right now. And I think that there's a clear tier here, right? You're looking at Drake and Caleb and then Marvin. And I feel like that is a consistent kind of piece out there in dynasty leagues. Now, at the 104, I'm still going to put Treveyon Henderson here. He was injured last year, so when you're looking at what he was able to do, wasn't great. 571 yards, 6 touchdowns, but he had a dreaded lower body injury, right? And so for running backs, when you're looking at that ankle injury there, obviously he didn't contribute. But his freshman year, he did break out. 1,200 yards, 183 attempts, 15 touchdowns, was phenomenal in the receiving game too. You see it there, 27 catches, 312 yards, explosive. Those are the words that you're going to say when you see Treveyon Henderson run. And again, I think he's in that running back one conversation, right? I think with the injury, he stepped back a little bit, but if he gets back to form, we're going to be talking about him in here. And you're talking about 4 legitimate picks. And when we think of what drafts look like right now, these are very good position players, right? Like right now in the 23 class, we're looking at these picks being quarterbacks right now and some question marks. Not Treveyon Henderson if he can be that kid, right? So then at the 105, we're going to go with, Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is already being touted as being like tight end 3 in Dynasty. So I do a lot of Dynasty mocks out there with people combined, like Dynasty mocks with groups combined there. Brock Bowers is tight end 3 already in Dynasty. He just got selected that in a combined mock that we've done to kind of extract value where that's at. 6'4", 230, that's where he's getting valued at. Darnell Washington's kind of talked about maybe being the first tight end drafted, and he played with him and doesn't have the numbers near there. So Brock Bowers, I think just looking at a value overall, like if he can already be drafted as tight end 3 or 4 in combined drafts, you're talking about a legitimate prospect. Now, 106, Raheem Sanders. Some people have him higher. Some will have him higher than Treveyon Henderson. Looked very good last year for Arkansas. 222 attempts, 1,400 yards, 10 touchdowns, 28 receptions, 271 yards, right? So when you think of Raheem Sanders and everybody there, I do think that the value in this class right now is at the running back position. Okay. So when you're looking at that, we have some legitimate running back candidates, kind of like it was this year in 23 class. Like I do think the 24 class for running backs is solid and deep again. Then at the wide receiver marks, you have some top elite guys, but there's some question marks after kind of the top 2. So Raheem is right there. He's right there with Treveyon Henderson as running back 1A, 1B, depending on who you look at. But if he can do that again in the SEC, have 1,400 yards, 10 touchdowns, those type of things, and defenses loaded the box against him because they don't really necessarily fear KJ Jefferson as a passer, you're going to see legitimate Raheem Sanders being up there. 227 right now, but there is word out of spring camp he's even bigger, right? So if he's in that 235 to 240 mark and he can run the way he can at that speed and get into the 4.5, woo-wee, man, you'd be talking about a legitimate prospect here. Now, next one here at the 107, Emeka Egbuka checks all the analytical numbers. So when you're looking at Emeka, he's going to check all that. Looks very good at Ohio State, and you just mark up Ohio State wide receivers and you just draft them, right? That's where we're getting at with Garrett Wilson, Olave. Okay, we're going to see that with JSN. Like, we're seeing that. Marvin Harrison Jr. in this class. 74 catches, 1,100 yards, 10 touchdowns. Legitimate slot guy when you're talking about it. Just gets targets, just scores. If you've heard that before, you've heard that with Olave. So that's kind of where you're looking at with Emeka. Now, at the 108 mark, we have Braylon Allen. Now, Braylon Allen is one of those it's an interesting, he was very raw, right? So 17 coming into college in 2021. You see the numbers there, 1,200 yards, 12 touchdowns. Now, he's not going to be a pass catcher. So the knock against Braylon's going to be like, hey, he's very raw kind of as a runner. He's a downhill kid. He's going to get those yards. But as a pass catcher, he's not going to have that, right? So this is one of those, like, who do you want more? A pass catching back in PPR formats? Or are you looking at just a downhill guy? Now, he's going to have numbers this year because they got to upgrade the quarterback position, a new offense. He's not going to have 8-9 man boxes now. So Braylon Allen's probably going to consistently get that 1,200-1,300 yards again. So you're talking about a kid that's ran for 1,200 yards each season from his freshman year. He's going to get drafted, and we're thinking of that. That's where that value, that running back class is. Next is Will Shipley. So when you look at Clemson, now this might be a little high for some. I think his value's kind of dropped a little bit, but 1,100 yards, 210 attempts, 15 touchdowns. Hey, and then he's got the pass catching upside. 38 catches, 242 yards. And one thing to know about this, Garrett Riley is there now. Lincoln Riley's brother. He coaches for USC. He's now the offensive coordinator. He was the offensive coordinator for TCU, just made it to the national championship game. Now he's there, and I think he's going to unlock Will Shipley a little bit. Kate Klubnik is their quarterback. I think that Shipley's going to have that more of that pass catching. And if you're looking at from PPR formats, I think he's going to be there. I think that there's testing questions, in terms of what his testing is going to look like. But overall, Will Shipley looks like that guy, right? So when you're looking at that 109, 110, 111 in that area, this is not a bad value play. Now, Donovan Edwards from Michigan's going to be there. 6'1", 204, probably the best pass catching above Shipley in this. Numbers won't really tell his whole story. Last year, he had a broken hand, but he's played through it. 991 yards and 7 touchdowns. I think the question for Donovan is his ability to kind of run in between the tackles. That's something we're going to have to see. Blake Corum came back, but he's coming back from an injury, so I don't know where that's going to be. Donovan's going to be early. 111, we're looking at Xavier Worthy, smaller guy. So BMI, is not going to like this. So analytics probably not going to like his size. 6'1", 163. You hope he can get into that 175 category when he comes out. Had a down year last year in the Texas offenses. It was not very good. Quinn Ewers, you're hoping he bounces back. I know he was injured a little bit last year as well. But again, he's going to be in that 111. But this is where I was talking about with you guys with that question mark at the wide receiver position right now. So that's where those late first, like, hey, what are their values, right? That's what we're going to look at here in a second. And the last kid that could be a breakout, his name is Malik Neighbors from LSU. Malik's really good. Now, he's got to stay out of trouble. He's been in a little bit of trouble this offseason. But overall, like, he could have that breakout season. And last year, with Kayshon Boutte being there and everything, Malik Neighbors looked just made him look ordinary, right? 1,000 yards, 3 touchdowns, and Kayshawn didn't have a good year. And a big part of that was Malik just earning targets, 72 catches. He could be the breakout player in the SEC. So Malik's someone that could rise up in these rankings that we're talking about next year being that 107, 106 mark. You're like, oh, hey, you heard it here at Football Guys, right? That's the idea here. Now, I want to kind of go through some watch list guys. And again, this will change. But Trey Benson, running back for Florida State, has got to keep a name on. Troy Franklin from Oregon. Jarquez Hunter from Auburn. If he can kind of break out and have a good year. Blake Corum's still out there. I think it just – I don't know if he got the draft capital, when he asked about it, where that was looking like. I think there's some concern there. Quinn Ewers is a quarterback here, so we didn't mention a ton of quarterbacks. There's always guys that pop off. Jordan Travis is out there. Michael Penix Jr. from Washington. Like, there's guys out there. If Quinn can step up, he was consensus #1 quarterback of this class for a while, and then he just didn't have that year that we've seen. Ja'Cory Brooks from Alabama. Jace McClellan, I think, is a guy that's being slept on a little bit. I think he's going to be a starter at Alabama. We could be talking about Jace being like an early second, maybe late first kind of draft if he has a good draft. So let's just kind of show you the watch list. But let's go into kind of like where we see where they're getting valued. So, early 2024 first right now. This is the kind of value you're seeing. You're seeing Travis Etienne. Now, I try to give you kind of a mix of where guys are going. So you're going to shift, and you can do it both ways. Early 2024 first, hey, I have this. I want one of these guys, or vice versa, right? So a lot of this stuff is kind of getting valued. I don't know if they'll do it straight up. I tried to find some trade examples, and they did. There was some that were straight up like this. And this just gives you an idea. If people really want Caleb, and they're like, hey, I can go get Caleb, and maybe I have a shot here. Maybe you like Travis Etienne. Maybe you like DK Metcalf, Devonta Smith, and Drake London. And you're like, hey, I'm okay getting an early 24 first out of this and getting these guys and going to get them. That's why I showed you guys this. And again, it's very league dependent. We know that. But this gives you an idea of maybe who you can move for. Or if you have DK and you feel like, hey, he's going to kind of take a step back. He's getting a little older. I talked about it in my tiers episode, and you maybe can get a 24 first in something, an auxiliary piece, another wide receiver or something that you can get thrown in there. Like Jerry Jeudy. If I can get an early 24 first, Jerry Jeudy for DK Metcalf, I would love that deal, right? Like those are the type of like little maneuvers you can make. Next one, here's your mid 2024 first. I think the interesting one is TJ Hawkinson. He's getting drafted really high. In a recent mock that we've done, he got drafted as high as tight end 3 or 4. So he has a hell of a value right now. And maybe you have a couple tight ends on your thing, and you're like, hey, I'm going to worry Hawkinson. Maybe the Vikings go out there and get a wide receiver. Maybe they go get JSN. Maybe they'll get a target getter. And if I can sell TJ Hawkinson right now at his elite value, this might be the area that you do it. And you think of where that mid 2024 first is based on what we just saw. That's kind of where you would go get him. Cooper Kupp, I think, is getting valued here. Kupp's a weird one. He's getting valued kind of from 105 to 109. So just put that in perspective. Devontae Adams, hey, this might be the last time you can get out of Devontae Adams. If you can get a mid or late 24 first for Devontae Adams, you might need to do it based on your roster. And then Josh Jacobs, hey, you got tagged. He's going to be back. I do think he's going to hold his value as long as he doesn't get hurt. Running backs are hard to ship right now. So again, if you can maybe get a 24 first, depending on your roster build, might be a time to go do that. And then finally, at the late 2024 first right now, Ramondre Stevenson, George Pickens is out there, Treylon Burks, George Kittle. So you're looking at that. And again, George Pickens is one of those guys. I know Jordan McNamara here from Football Guys is talking about him like, hey, if you can get a 24 first, that's where you would go. I think it's an interesting value play, right? You just saw where they're at. You see like where the running backs are kind of getting value there and those wide receivers. And it's just one of those things. Will Pickens ever get back to that late 2024 first value if you think he's going to break out? Now, if you're a Pickens guy and you believe, hey, see those wide receivers and not sold on those guys or kind of where that value play is, and you want to ship for Pickens, that's why we're doing this as well, right? Treylon Burks is one guy that I wouldn't mind kind of shipping away depending on where that value is at. George Kittle, again, age cliff. Do you think he can kind of do this as a tight end? And then Ramondre Stevenson. I still think he's getting valued in that spot. I've talked about him as kind of being my sell heading into the offseason. I think even now you could still argue that because people think he can be that running back one consistent. And like these running backs are hard to get rid of. If you can get maybe a late 24 first plus something there, I think that's a good play. So I wanted to go through this mock. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's a little different, right? It's 2024 rookie mock, a little different than what we have, but hey, I'm excited about this class, but also where the value is at, and the perceived value is so important. Like, where can you kind of manipulate the market and where it's at? That early first, everybody thinks they can get Caleb. Not everybody can, right? But you use that and you go get that and you go win your league. So that's why I showed you guys kind of the player value, what you can expect next week. And if you like this stuff, we do a college football show every week here on the channel on Wednesday nights live. live and we kind of dive into these guys, getting you ready for your rookie draft so you feel comfortable next year, right? So you have the resources for free. So we appreciate you guys. I'll check you guys next time. Please hit that like and subscribe button here. We're pushing to 20K subs, and we really want to get that number in the next couple of weeks. And you guys are what makes that happen. So appreciate you guys. I'll check you guys next time.